How's it going, folks? This is Mike, and I'm here to do the latest episode of Genre Files, a little project we're doing. This is episode 6, okay? And this week we are doing comedies before the year 1990, which leaves a lot of time for classic comedies, I'll tell you. So I'd like to pick one of the best from the golden age of Hollywood. This is a film that almost everybody recognizes as being a classic. I think everybody pretty much agrees on this one. It's called It Happened One Night. 1934, filmed at Columbia Studios, directed by Frank Capra, and it stars Clark Gable, Claude Colbert. All right, it's just, I don't know what to say. Well, I could say a lot about this movie, but it's all been said before. It's just a beautiful blend of comedy, screwball comedy, which is kind of a subgenre of comedy that was very popular back in the 30s and 40s, and also a lot of drama thrown in. It's not just a laugh a minute. It's got some of the great sequences that are just drop dead funny, but it also has a lot of very kind of poignant moments, which I guess that's a Frank Capra film for you. All right, so the story is kind of set the tone for many films afterward that would kind of do the same kind of story, but this is probably the first time it was ever done. An heiress, played by Claude Colbert, a young woman, sort of what they used to call a madcap heiress, right? She has eloped with a man whom her rich father believes to be a gold digger, somebody that she is not suitable for her at all. And he is angry that she's eloped with this guy. And before the bride and groom have a chance to consummate the marriage, the father kidnaps the daughter to try to get her away from this guy so that she can think clearly and realize that she's made a mistake. Well, she's angry as hell. The father has the daughter on a boat, his ship, private ship, somewhere off the coast of Miami. And the daughter literally jumps off the boat and swims to shore and somehow manages to elude everybody, even though she's a woman swimming through the water, and you think somebody would be able to keep an eye on her and catch her, but no, this is the movies. So she manages to get on a bus that's headed for New York, where she's going to hopefully reunite with her new husband. And at the same time, Clark Gable is playing a newspaper reporter who is on the phone being fired by his boss because he hasn't been doing his job, basically. And the guy just tells the boss, go to hell, and then he gets on the same bus to go back to New York. Well, these two people end up sitting in a seat next to each other. They're not getting along very well. Before long, the reporter recognizes who this young woman is, and she's afraid that he's going to turn her in. He makes a deal with her. He says, I will help you get to New York. I will help basically defy your father, as long as you will give me an exclusive story. So he's hoping he will be able to get his job back. So she reluctantly agrees. And they set off on this road trip together. After a while, they get away from the bus. They're on foot. All kinds of crazy things happen. They meet some very strange people. And as you might it's just totally inconceivable that these two very different kinds of people are not going to fall in love. Of course they do. But it's really a very funny story, and both of these people are very, very good at what they're doing. Now, it's interesting that Frank Capra had a hard time casting this film. He offered the part of the heiress to a lot of different actresses. I think the first one he offered it to was, of all people, Miriam Hopkins. I can't imagine her doing something like this. And later on, he offered it to Myrna Loy, who hated... All these actresses hated the script. Margaret Sullivan... who else did he offer it to? I think he said Katharine Hepburn was one of them. And Robert Montgomery was offered the part of the reporter. Finally, he was able to get Clark Gable loaned out from MGM. And the story goes, and it may not be true, but the story goes that Louis B. Mayer, who's the head of MGM, was unhappy with Clark Gable because he had refused to do a film that Mayer wanted him to do. So he was basically punishing him by loaning him out to Columbia, which was a much lesser studio than MGM, to do this kind of low-budget B film, which is what everybody thought it was going to be. And as far as Claudette Colbert, she was under contract to Paramount, and Capra had worked with her before. I think it was 1927. I can't remember the name of the film, but it did not turn out well. And Claudette Colbert swore she would never work for Frank Capra again. Well, somehow she agreed to do this if he would double her salary. She thought that he wouldn't be able to do it, but she said, if you'll double my salary, I'll do it. Her usual salary was, I think, $25,000, so she was paid $50,000 to do the film, which was a lot more than Clark Gable was getting. So anyway, she did it. It was shot in about 4 weeks. Now, supposedly, Claudette Colbert complained all the time. She complained every single day because she was not happy making this film, and she didn't really get along with Frank Capra. But she and Gable did have a very good working relationship, and even Frank Capra was able to admit that although Colbert complained all the time, she was very, very good in the part. And indeed, they were both very good. And it was nominated for 5 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, and Screenplay. Won all 5. It was the first movie in film history to win all the top awards, and held that record for quite a while. So there's just nothing in the world bad you can say about it. Nobody ever thought this was going to be the enduring classic. Certainly not Gable and Colbert. When Claudette Colbert won the Academy Award, she ended up her acceptance speech by saying, "I owe this," meaning the Oscar, to Frank Capra. So maybe she really changed her opinion of him after she saw how good the film turned out to be. Now, there's another film I'd like to mention that was, in a way, kind of an imitation of It Happened One Night. 7 years later, in 1941, at Warner Brothers, this film was released, The Bride Came C.O.D., starring James Cagney and Bette Davis, which was again about a madcap heiress who wanted to run off with her musician fiance, played by Jack Carson, whom she had only known just for a few days, and her father, played by Eugene Pallett, was trying to get her back to make her change her mind. Somehow, it's a very convoluted plot. She gets on James Cagney's plane. James Cagney is kind of his usual fast-talking character who is almost about to lose his plane because he doesn't have any money. He makes a deal with the father to get the heiress back. They get lost down in the desert. I don't know. And it's all very silly, but it doesn't have, even though it has some very funny parts in it, it doesn't have the kind of poignant human warmth that Capra's film had. It has a lot of laughs and a lot of physical comedy, and it's very cool to see Bette Davis kind of losing herself and landing on cactus and screaming and stuff like that. And she and James Cagney worked very well together, and they had worked together once before, back in 34 or 35, in a low-budget film called Jimmy the Gent. They were really, it's too bad they didn't work more together, but it didn't have the same kind of quality that It Happened One Night has. Although I would advise you to see both of these just for historical reasons, and just to see Bette Davis in a kind of a different, very different role, considering this is 1941. I mean, she had been making this string of very dramatic, heavy, and soap opera type pictures. And in 1941, she did The Great Lie, which is one of her best soap opera type films. And after this one, she would do one of her most downbeat and unlikable characters in one of her best films, The Little Foxes, for which she would also receive an Academy Award nomination. So this was definitely a departure for Bette Davis. Not something she was terribly proud of, but it is great fun to see her doing this. That's my video. All right, be sure to watch everyone else's, and if you have any comments about either of these two films or anything else, please make them. Thank you.